at her first Trump rally on Saturday.
I get the wonderful opportunity of introducing Jill. You know, I met Jill right here. She came to us, and we got to know her when she was starting her campaign for District 2. I spent lots of hours and lots of days door knocking in Jill's territory. And I experienced lots of positives and an incredible amount of negatives with the Ohio Democratic Party and the Ohio AFL-CIO. And the problems that we had being able to speak to people about the candidates and the candidates who value what we value. I was shut down many times not being able to speak about what I knew was important. And I don't think that that is successful in supporting our candidates. We have candidates out there that have a vision for where they want to go, but we're being shut down. I can just give you a real simple example. Jessica Miranda. I would get my message from the Ohio Federation of Teachers on Monday morning, and he would say, she's got a real shot. She's got a real shot. Get out there and work with her. Get out there and work with her. I would go on over to the FFL-CIO office, and they would tell me, oh, no, there's one labor union that doesn't like her, so we're not endorsing her. They didn't like her. Well, she was a school board president, and she had to work in a very nonpartisan manner as a president of school board to work for the children of Winton Woods. However, it took weeks before the FFL-CIO would endorse her. It's all a bit of this little politics, and we see what happened with Jessica. We can learn from her. She did not hold it, that did not hold her back. She went door to door, meeting people in her area, and she won by 52 votes. And so therefore, you get a message from person here, support. You get a message over here, don't support. We can do this, we can't do this. And so therefore, I think we need to do a lot better job of communicating. And I know there's a firewall and everything, but we still need to have a lot better communication as to who's going where and who we're supporting and how we're supporting. So one person that I was definitely behind was Jill, because I believed in Jill. Believed in what Jill had to say, what Jill was going to do for us, and me being someone from the labor movement, she is from a labor family, and so she knows what it's like to be a working person, and I'm so glad she's here with us, and she's going to stay active. I know that. What's her next steps? Who knows? She might tell us, but she might not, but she has a vision that I think she wants to share with us. Thanks. Jill.
There we go. Okay, it's on. Katie, thank you so much for that introduction. I will step up a little bit. It is so good to be with you guys again.
That sound is bad.
It is.
I got it.
How's that?
That's better.
Okay. This is going very well. All right. First of all, I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for all of the hard work that you put into my race. I could not have done what we did without you. We did it together. We had the best turnout in a congressional in Hamilton County. We beat Brad Wenstrup by double digits in Hamilton County. Sadly, that is only one of 8 counties that I was running in. So this actually might be a segue to what Martha was talking about earlier. Happy anniversary. It's almost primary day anniversary. And, you know, I know that this was a very divisive topic throughout the entire thing, but I want to point that out again, that we had 8 counties for District 2, and I won Pike, I won Scioto, I won Brown, I won Claremont, I won Hamilton, and I won one more. I didn't win Claremont, hold on a second. Not Claremont. I lost Claremont by 86 votes. No, Clinton's not in the second. And I lost Adams County by 10 votes. Okay, so when we talk about the Hamilton County endorsement, any kind of determination, that's one county. And I was 86 votes away from, 86 votes away from a sweep of all 8 counties. And so I understand that there are people who supported Janet. I certainly appreciate what she brought to the table in terms of the discussion. But I won 6 out of 8 counties, but for, I'd like to go find those 86 people and double knock their doors. And it would have been Ollie. So in terms of the greater question of endorsements, for anybody who came in a little late, Martha had a question about pre-primary endorsements in general, county endorsements, and what we should do about them, how they affect races. And she wanted to know my opinion on them in particular. I really find that endorsements can be quite useful, but it really needs to be a case-by-case basis. For instance, I remember very clearly this time last year being at a Wyoming Democrats meeting, and there was a representative from ODP, younger guy there, and everybody in the room started to ask him, well, who, look at the gubernatorial candidates that we have and how qualified they are and how talented they are. What does the party have to say about who we should go for? And this guy was trying 5 ways from Sunday to think of something to say. But the answer was only, we can't tell you that because you told us clearly you didn't want us to endorse. Now, in terms of candidates who are on an equal playing field, who have a lot to offer, who have the ability and wherewithal to win elections, I think that there's not much to be gained by endorsement. Let them battle it out. If you see somebody that you don't think, and as a greater party, you should decide that. You should decide who it is you support, who it is that you think would do the better job. But also, as we have kept hearing in the press, who's electable? Who's got the electability, right? We have to think about that. That's what everybody keeps talking about with our white male candidates and all of this. Well, we don't need to have it be that definition, but we do need to win elections. We need to win elections with people who we believe will inspire the vast majority of people to vote for them so that we can win elections, because as it's been pointed out, we missed this blue wave. Not one congressional seat flipped in Ohio in 2018, not one. Something's wrong. Gerrymandering works. Gerrymandering works.
Leadership may be a problem.
Well, I mean, as far as I can tell from the election results in general, though, there is no way that my race would have been winnable, regardless of resources, regardless of the commitment of countless folks like you guys. If you look at the results, you see a red curtain as soon as you step outside of our county. And that was intentional. And then if you look at the first, it's more of a siren song, right? It seems winnable. It seems like you can get there. And I think that it's drawn so that much like the sirens, you crash onto the rocks of Warren County just a percentage or two shy of what you need in the best case scenario. So until we're redrawn, I hate to say it, but I don't see any real hope in terms of helping our representation in the House. I think that we are up against something that is very well thought out, very well planned, and very sinister in that way, because it keeps our voices silent. So what can we work on? Where can we go? Well, we have an opportunity in terms of our state rep races coming up in 20, because while they're also gerrymandered, we have seen through folks like Jessica, through people like Christine who've come much closer, Christine Fisher, that we have real opportunities in changing Hamilton County, regardless of gerrymandering, that we can make real headway in our state house. And I think we need to commit to that. And certainly, we have a presidential race in 2020 with, I believe, 20 candidates right now. I'm gonna guess in a room like this that you guys have your preferred candidates already. How many people are open right now? Oh, that makes me so happy. That's great. It's an embarrassment of riches, right? I I mean, we've got very qualified, talented people. We've got a record number of women, a record number of minorities. We've got really capable white dudes. I mean, there are very few ways that we can go wrong.
That's shocking.
Shockingly, thank you, white guys. We're so happy. But this is the thing. I mean, I think, and I want this to be more of a discussion and a give and take. So we are presented with this wealth of opportunity, and with people who we need to remember are 80% of the way on the same page. Now, as we get further and further along in this primary process, and we start making our decisions, and we're going to passionately support our candidates, at one point, come next May, next June, next July, it's not going to be our candidate. It's going to be the candidate. And having lived through a primary process, I know how passionately people get behind their preferred candidates. I can tell you this, no one will succeed unless we can get behind that person 100%, even if they only agree with 80% of our values. And so I'm curious, since you are the activists, you guys get this work done every day. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, your organizational strategies, because I think that we have a real chance to stay positive, to talk about policy differences, and then to be able to come together better than we have before after this primary, because it is going to be an uphill battle no matter who gets the nomination. But I also wanted to know, you know, I know it says specifically 2020, we also have opportunities on the local level, which I wasn't planning on talking about, but listening to some of the questions and some of the comments, knowing Marlena is here, I think we need to talk about how it is that the Republicans have built their power structure. Because they built it at the school board level. They built it by winning these local elections that have low turnout. They start there. After school boards, they go to city councils, village township councils. They win the local elections and built a wall on which they could stand. And I think that while it is so important that we defeat Trump in 2020, it is more important that we look at how they succeeded and figure out how to do it for ourselves by supporting people like Marlena, other good Democrats who are running for these offices on our local level, in our local towns. Because if we don't build that bench and that support, we can win a presidency every year from here on out and it won't change a thing. The work is done on the ground. The work is done in the municipalities. And the work needs to be done by the people we choose. So I think that we need to think about this in a micro and a macro level. I think we need to think about how we're going to be best ambassadors for our beliefs, with our friends, with our neighbors, with people who may early on get on board with one candidate or another, who early on might decide that they are in a camp and can't support somebody else, because that's how we fall. But we also need to make sure that they're aware of elections like this year's, like our school board elections, like our municipal judgeship that are up this year, because nobody's paying attention. You know, they think it doesn't matter, and it does. And so I think as much as we can, I want to see us be as activated this year as we were last year, as we will be next year. Because we need to get door knocking for our school board candidates. We need to be volunteering for our judicial candidates. Because without those offices, we won't be able to make a difference. So I was hoping to hear that we have some people ready to help organize some teams, some strategies to get people caring about these smaller races.
Jill, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. It's extremely important. I would not recommend to anyone to do what I do. Honestly, I wouldn't. But I do have a point of good information. Okay, I organized for Jill Stein only because I do what I do because of who I am. And I felt that was the right thing to do. I organized all over Kentucky to get her on the ballot Now, this is what she said. This is one of the things that she said that was very, very real. And when people are confused about what's going on, I think it's very helpful to say, most of the Democratic Party talk left, move right. And that's because of money and other, other things. Now, be that as it may, there are many Democratic candidates for whom I know talk left, move left, and are progressive. And those are the people that I care about. And those are the people that I vote for. And just as a point of information, I organized for Jill Stein all over Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, all over Kentucky I went twice. And this is just a point of information because Kentucky went for Trump, and this is the reason why. They were all for Bernie Sanders. I talked to people, I spent like a month talking to people on the ground. They were all for Bernie Sanders, and when the Democratic Party cut him off at the knees, they voted for Trump. Just saying. And I talk to these people, and these are good people. These are people that care about their kids, they care about progressive issues, they care about everything. But they were so sickened by Hillary and by what the Democratic Party did to Bernie Sanders. Now, that's all I'm saying.
I wanted to speak that. I know Kentucky very well. I grew up in the center of Kentucky. I know many people there. They're very right-wing. They absolutely would never vote for a Democrat at this point as a presidential candidate, no matter who you put forth. Now, and now they're paying the price. They're losing their health care. They've got a crazy right-wing governor who's taken everything away from them. Will they learn a lesson? I don't know. But to say that they only voted for Trump because Bernie wasn't on the ticket, I
Only
did.
the people I talked to.
Yeah,
I all of them. Only
yeah.
the people I talked to.
I just don't buy it. I don't buy it.
So I think
But beyond that, perfect is the enemy of the good.
yes.
And we have to get over this idea that if we don't get the perfect candidate, we're going to protest. The protest vote has lost us the election twice in the last 3 cycles. We got to get over that and get behind the best candidate for the Democratic Party to have power again. We've lost all our power because we have this mentality that if we can't get everything we want, we're not going to vote and we're going to fight against, I just think that's a very dangerous problem.
And in a nutshell, this is where we. And this is it in a nutshell, right? That we can care very passionately about our primary candidates, but we have to be able to find a way to support the Democratic candidate if we're Democrats, if that's what we want. If what we want is to take back power in the White House, to take back power, put our party back on top. We need to be able to say, once the primary is over, that the primary is over, and this is where we are. And I think that it needs a commitment from us, from those of us who care, from those of us who pay attention, who do the work, that we will act as that ambassador for our candidate. Right now, this is the time to have that discussion. This is the time to support Bernie, to support Beto, to support Kamala, to support Pete, and to wear that as proudly as you can. But no matter who it is, after that convention, we need to wear that and wear it proudly. Because if we can't be 100% behind our candidate, people sense that, and we will fall again.
Thanks, Jill. I want to talk about, you were talking about strategies. One of the things that Alberta said, this new, what opened up yesterday by 3? Yes, supermajority. I think that is a great step. I think 10 people or 12 of the candidates have signed up. But since I was District 1, I volunteered for AFTA.
Sorry, I think you're talking about Indivisible and their pledge that the candidates have signed up for.
Yeah.
And that's a different issue than, yeah. Oh, okay.
Here's the mic.
Oh, okay. It's on. Okay. There are two groups that I heard about yesterday, and one
Okay.
is the supermajority with the three leaders going together, but the other one is with Indivisible, and they have a pledge that they've given, that they want voters to pay attention to, sign up for, but also they gave it to the Democratic candidates, and 11 of the candidates have signed, Bernie Sanders being one of the first ones to
Okay.
sign it.
Okay.
And that's, well, if you want to explain what there are three parts of it.
No, you go ahead
Oh,
and explain, then
okay.
I'll talk about my strategy.
Okay, there are three positions on it, and the first one, it's exactly what, you're talking about, Jill. So can you explain them, or, I know vaguely what they are.
I actually did not look at that yet.
Okay, they're asking people to be, number one, both the people and the candidates, to be positive and to talk about issues, policies and that, but to stay positive and none of the candidate bashing. The second one is, I don't remember for the people, but for the candidates, once a candidate is chosen, they are to immediately endorse that candidate. And the third one is that they are to do everything, make themselves available to that person's campaign and do everything they can for that person. So I know those better than what the voters are very similar, other than, endorsing and that, but to work for that candidate and to be supportive and positive.
Yeah.
So,
I just looked it up.
That's fantastic. I think the first thing, it starts with the leaders of that group. So whoever is, if I support Pete, then Pete needs to endorse and tell the supporters to do that. One of the small things, since I volunteered for AFTAB, as people know, West Side is very red, and Green Township is also very red. So I chose to volunteer to be the precinct executive, unofficial till that time. But I knocked on doors and I said, I'm your volunteer precinct executive. And I knocked on every door, red and blue. And the simple thing I asked is, have you heard about, these are the people running, and have you heard about AFTAB? Would you like to know more about him? And I would take the whole slate, the Democratic slate, and talk to them. It was only one person. It included my neighborhood and 3-4 other streets. Only one person was rude to me. But other than that, I would say, you have a right to if anybody started being rude, I would say, you have a right to your political views. You don't have to be rude to me. I asked you if you wanted to hear. And if you said no, I would walk away. And I made more friends, even though they are red, and I was able to change some minds just based on policies. So when we go canvassing, we need to know our candidates' policies so that we can talk to the people. They don't want to hear about the other person just as, whatever that person did. So that's one of the strategies I think worked for me. And it'll start at this lower levels till it goes to the general election.
I think that's exactly right. Engaging folks where they are and being able
Right.
to draw the connection between your candidate's policies and how it will affect the voters' lives. Because I think that there are so many people who have been so turned off by what they perceive as a lack of a connection there. What happens in Washington is bad, and it's stressful, and it's troubling, and what does it have to do with me anyway? Well, at the end of the day, we know what a danger point we're at right now. The folks who live under authoritarian regimes, they don't live in misery. The sun comes out, they go to parties, they have drinks with their friends, they go on vacation. There's nothing that is visibly different in the mainstream, in the living of your life. It's on the edges. It's the political opinions. It's wondering about what's happening versus knowing what's happening. It's about having a say in what happens and being careful about what you say about what happens. And so for many people, I think that there's a disconnect there, that they don't perceive that danger because everything seems the same for them. And they don't perceive a connection to folks in Washington because they don't understand the effect that these policies will have on their individual lives. And so I think making that connection and making those points clear are key to helping people understand that truly our party has their best interest at heart. And again, we're not going to get everybody. You know, I mean, this focus on the Trump voter and how do we bring them all back. We're not going to bring them all back. We just need 2 or 3% of them back. And I think if we commit to knowing our candidates' policies and drawing those connections and studying up on how best we can talk about them, that we'll be able to get that 2 or 3% back.
This is not strategy, but I wanted to back up when you talked about the gerrymandering, that you didn't think we would have any chance of winning. And I know it's in the court system now. Are there no candidates willing to run against Shabbat and Winstrup if the lines stay the same?
So there are people who are looking into a run right now. David.
Yeah.
And there are a number of really good candidates looking, particularly in the first, as it will again be a targeted district. I don't plan to run again in the second, not just on my own advice, but on the advice of a number of people who I trust a lot, Sherrod Brown, people like that, because there's a difference between a race closely lost and a lost cause. And right now, I can tell you, because I spent so much time on the road, I spent so much time talking with these folks. The message for this area, for the second district, they're not ready for it. They're not listening. And if you look at the electoral map of Ohio, it was this district where Sherrod lost badly, lost ground from 6 years ago, where we...
I'm putting it on this side of your body because the receiver's over there.
Okay, it just keeps turning off is the problem, it's weird. There is such despair in southern Ohio. Economically, it's so depressed. It is the hardest hit of the entire country by the opioid crisis. And to get a message out effectively to everybody, you need resources greater than what we were able to muster for the second district race. I don't think, however, that even with resources comparable to what was spent in the first, we would have been able to get that message through in the volume that it needed to be heard in this area right now. That said, I'm obviously happy to support and work very hard for anybody running against Brad Wenstrup in the second district, should we remain in the second district this time around. We haven't heard anything from the Sixth Circuit yet. You know, I know we have a positive ruling in Michigan. I find it hard to see how the Supreme Court would feel comfortable or confident in stepping into a state's electoral process to make real changes, although they have before, so fingers crossed.
David?
Hey Jill, thanks for coming.
Thanks for
And thanks for running into, you did a lot of hard work, and your family supported you, and I know it's time to spend time with them again.
We got a puppy.
You got a puppy. I want to talk about local. You brought that up about how important it is to win these local races in the communities, the townships, etc. Because if you look at the townships, many of them are all Republican council people or whatever they call them in those townships. I think 19 for us is very, very important, not just because of the municipal judges and not just because of the school board, but again, it's building that infrastructure and the wall for us to stand on for 2020. To me, it's like the runway. So I know you meet here every week, and I apologize for not coming more often here, but how many of you go back to your own communities and are either ward chair or PE? great. If you don't know your ward chair, please call Eddie Davenport and find out who your ward chair is, and call them and ask how you can get involved. Because Jill is absolutely right. The leadership, if you look down right now and look at your shoes, that's where the leadership is. It is the feet on the ground. We, as those people on the ground, if you will, are really leading. Really leading. It's only now that the leadership at the top of our party is paying attention. So we have got to continue the feet on the ground movement, and 19 is a great place to start, actually right now, because we need to find the rest of those Dems who didn't come out to vote, and especially in our minority communities. We cannot go to them again in 2020 and say, oh, will you vote for this Democrat? And we haven't paid attention to them since the last presidential election. We have got to have partnerships. And I think if we go back and find out how we can work together to support our precincts and wards in those areas and call upon our African American leaders to help us with that, especially in this municipal race. So I think if you can all go back and just call your ward chair, find out, can you be a precinct exec? It's not a big job you have to do, but it's a way to reach out to others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, I'm gonna steal this one right now because that has died. But Sandy's exactly right. Let's take this respite. Let's build our systems even stronger. The work that we did in 18 was so well organized and so committed. And I know that we have more resources that we can tap, more folks we can bring on board and build this strong defense of what we've won, what we've worked so hard to win in this county, and go out and win more. Okay.
David's back here. He's next.
Actually, picked up on something that you said a few minutes ago, that Southern Ohio is really an area that's in despair. I actually see this up in Warren County. It's a little bit more affluent than a lot of the counties that you talked about, but suicide is the 5th leading cause of death in Warren County right now. It is definitely an area that's in despair. A lot of people are hurting. These are issues that we can talk about, and these are issues that we can address through our local elections. If you care about public health, that's addressed at the city level, that's addressed at the county level. If you care about climate change, that's addressed at the city level, that's addressed at the county level. Land use decisions are made at the local level. That's where we need to be working on these issues. If you think, well, I'm a big issues person, I want to follow what happens in DC, well, emissions regulations and miles per gallon, that's one part of the equation, but most of climate change, most of public health decisions happen right in our own towns. So it's definitely worthwhile getting involved in to make the most change right in your own backyard. Now, a question that I have actually goes back to the primaries. Recently, it came out in The Intercept that the DCCC said that they're going to be blacklisting consultants who work with candidates who oppose or who are running in a primary against a currently seated Democrat, and that may also bleed over into blacklisting consultants who are going up against a DCCC endorsed candidate. What are your thoughts on that, and especially how it might play out in the districts for people having a perceived notion of fairness in the primary process?
Oh, the DCCC.
Could you explain that a little bit? Because he spoke.
Sorry, yes. Okay, so the DCCC is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the arm of the DNC that works to elect Democrats at the congressional level. The other arm is the DSCC, Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, same for Senate. They, as you guys know, all of those of us who run, we hire a lot of consultants. You need to have people help you produce your television, people help you do your polling, people to help you do your mail. And you know, it's a fairly lucrative business, but people are, these firms, they're partisan. So you work with Democratic pollsters, Democratic mail houses, etc. Recently, the DCCC has, they're known as the DCCC. The DCCC has announced that they are going to not work with consultants who work with primary challengers to incumbents. And as David just said, that might extend to challengers to Democratic endorsed candidates in primaries. I find this to be completely untenable, really. I mean, the entire business is based on these healthy primaries, really, because once you get down to it, you've got a few groups working with winners in the general election. So I think it's a lot of smoke. I also find it interesting, if you look at how they're organized, every 4 to 6 years, you're gonna find pretty much an entire clean sweep in the DCCC, and we've just seen that happen after the last election cycle. So institutional memory is short. Institutional knowledge is lacking. I happen to know that the representative who is working on the Ohio congressional races was not even aware that there was a lawsuit about the gerrymandering under consideration. Yes. So they're working to recruit candidates in districts that might not be standing in a couple of months, and he is, his name is Sam. So here's, I find this to be a very interesting, much like pre-primary endorsements. The DCCC can be useful, and it can be obstreperous. They have a lot of resources at their disposal, and it is useful as a candidate to have them on your side to help wield those resources. At the same time, they view it purely as a numbers game. It is win, it is loss, and it is how much have you raised. And if you have not raised enough, it doesn't matter what your polling looks like even. They're not gonna spend time on your raise. Now, I like to be very careful about this because fundraising is it's a touchy issue. I don't see this as part of the money in politics problem necessarily, because you need to be able to pay for the methods that we as a society have used to communicate, right? So mail costs money, and television costs money, and these are the ways we get our messages out. And without a full public finance system, which would be great, but until we get there, then you need to be able to raise your money to get your message out. And for races such as congressionals, you need a lot of money. You know, I mean, I'm very proud of what we were able to raise in the district in which I ran. 600,000 was 3 times more, 4 times more than what's been raised in this district in over 10 years. And I heard there was somebody else running for Congress that year, so, you know, very happy with what we did. It wasn't quite enough to reach 8 counties worth of people. Fundraising is important, but it's not the only part that matters. The DCCC's most destructive impulses come through that, and through this presumed knowledge of what's best. They don't understand local districts. They don't have the staff or the capacity to do that research. And unless and until they do, I find them to be as helpful as you, the candidate, can make them. And otherwise, don't.
So very quickly, I just read, I think yesterday or the day before.
Louder, Dick.
I read just yesterday or the day before a definition of liberal and progressive, and maybe everybody won't agree, but it really struck me. A liberal is somebody who will agree with all of your social goals, but not your economic goals, and progressives do. And I think that is right at the heart of what happened with Bernie. He brought that whole thing alive. He was a voice crying in the wilderness. This time around, listen to the new candidates. They're all putting it right at the top. They're talking about the bread and butter issues and money in politics. Even Nancy Pelosi, can you imagine that? So we don't want to, that I think is, if you want to motivate your people, talk about those issues and they'll be motivated.
I may not need the mic, my voice is pretty loud. You can't hear without it. So getting back to strategy and how you win on the ground at the local level, I know I've heard a little bit on NPR about Republicans have gotten very good at defining what is the one issue at the local level. And that issue may have nothing to do with this broader, economics, environment, whatever it is that we're all sort of thinking about and talking about and care passionate. It could be about the new sheriff that's coming on board or something with the school district. So what is our ability to get that laser focus? Because this is how they are winning on the ground in small races. And then secondly, is there anything in that vein that you learned from District 2
that sort of tense up to any type of universal issue. Because I think sometimes what we think it is, it's not what it really is that's going to get it to win.
Right.
Because it's about winning.
So I think there are a couple of different ways to look at this. And first and foremost, I think we need our candidates to stop being afraid of taking specific policy positions. If people don't know what you're for, then they're going to find it really hard to get behind you. So we have to, as candidates, and for our candidates, make sure that we are articulating what we want to do for you, what our candidate will do for you. And to pinpoint what those issues are, what people care about, that's on the folks like us, on the folks like you guys.
But I'm also talking getting very laser focused, because that's how they're winning on guns and with abortion. We've got to figure, I'm not saying those are our issues, but what is it at the local level that's going to flip that township, whatever's going to flip there to win these local races? It might play out differently in a broader race like all of District 2. But
Yeah.
are we trying to work that strategy? Because I never see or hear anything like that.
No, and actually this is interesting because I think Sandy, working with Bonnie Dunkelman, they're trying very much to start being able to pull us together to share our community issues so that we do know what those community hot buttons are.
And then find the one thing. If there is a one thing, and there usually is.
Well, and
Yes, whatever it is that for that area.
Let's explain to people what tax abatement does to us. Explain why we're so poor. Half the town is poor. Rich won't pay taxes.
Here, here.
No, we're over here.
Okay, sorry.
I just wanted to make a couple comments.
Real close, your mouth is loud.
Okay, I just wanted to make a couple comments. One about the national election. Hillary won the popular vote, and we can't forget that. The other thing is that the Democratic Party has to stand for some things, just as exactly what the gentleman said back here, that we have to stand for somebody. People need to know, oh, you're a Democrat, you stand for this or that. And I think that was lacking in the last election. And I don't think we can ever have a sentiment that any people in this country or any country are despicable. I think we have to be very careful about how we approach our own citizens, and the Democratic Party needs to stand up and do this.
Here, here.
So, I think that's right, and I think that, you know, it's messaging. It's a messaging problem we've had for a very long time. But I feel like we're starting to come around on that. And in 18, for instance, our message was healthcare and education and jobs for my race. These were the three.
How did that play on this question?
To the extent that we could get the message out, I think it was, people were open to it because that was at the heart of what those local issues were. Now, in terms of the bigger, of higher level races, you're gonna have higher level issues. But I think what you're saying is, in terms of the local elections, you are gonna be able to figure out what your community wants to hear and what it needs.
We've
So,
got to get better at the chessboard.
yes, we need to have, and we get lost. We get lost in issues that are important but don't relate, like the Electoral College, for instance. You know, it's important. It may be a problem. Hillary won. But it's not going to win us an election. It's not going to fire up the electorate to vote for our candidate. People want to know who is going to make sure that they can afford health care if they get sick. People want to know who is going to make sure that they are getting educated for the new jobs and what's going to happen in terms of this new AI revolution.
We say Medicare for all.
Yeah,
But we support Medicare for all.
I think that's pretty much, yes, I think that is a settled issue at this point. The question is just how.
Okay. I'd like to say I'm concerned the Democratic Party is run by Wall Street. I think Pelosi's married to a financier. Schumer's clearly a Wall Street Democrat. And I think Bill Clinton delivered the Democratic Party to Wall Street. And I think that's a big part of the problem. The Democratic leadership is really not interested in traditional Democratic values, as I think clearly. I think FDR was probably the best president that we've had since Lincoln. Right. So I think he delivered us from socialism. But anyway, it concerns me that in fact the leadership in the Democratic Party are Wall Street folks. I also don't think Hillary ran after not having a democratic process to be the candidate. Hillary, I mean, she basically took it. Then she didn't run a good campaign. She talked about, okay, we're closing the coal fields. Let's close that. She didn't even visit Wisconsin. And she didn't even talk about the issues that were on her own website, which were Democratic issues. She joined CNN, NBC, attacking Trump, giving him more airtime than he deserved. He got billions of dollars of free airtime. Had Bernie gotten that, he'd probably be president today.
So
the Democrats are in trouble. They need to change their whole approach.
I'd like to look at it from the other side of this, though, which include the record number of women and younger folks who recently took seats in the House of Representatives, who are winning at the local levels, who are starting to lead this revolution. The current leadership of the Democratic Party is on its way out. Those of us who ran to a number have signed pledges to reject corporate money, to focus more on those bottom line issues. I hear you on Hillary. I don't know how productive that conversation is going to be to us right now, because she's not running. She won't run again. And just not, well, but this is what I'm saying, we're already not doing that though. True, but I think we have. I mean, when you look at the field that's out there now, right? They are all running on their own merits. They are all running without the support, the party staying out of it. There's too many people. They are all running small dollar donor driven campaigns. And so I think that what we need to do is just make sure that we stay on that path with them. Because we are learning the lesson. Hopefully we have learned it like gospel. We are going to take it with us as we try to have a better, clearer, cleaner electoral process.
Okay, all right. Okay, as someone who has been a student and a teacher of politics since I moved here in 1963 and actively engaged in democratic politics in more ways than I want to count, several things I learned over the years. One is understand the process. Know what's doable and not doable. Know, fight for what you believe in anyway, even knowing it's a lost cause. Hang in there with lost causes. They might not be lost causes forever, and they surely will be if you don't get involved. Also, make sure that you understand, you inform yourself about who is for what and the candidates, whatever, and do get behind the one that is most aligned with what you believe in. Show up, and don't just show up where you're talking to each other and you're all on the same page. Show up where if you say something, it might click with somebody. They might actually hear it and listen and change their minds. And when push comes to shove, we're always stuck with results maybe we don't like, but there's always a lesser of two evils. Vote for the lesser of two evils, whatever it is. Okay.
I am concerned as a new person here whether the ballot is protected. Are there paper ballots in Ohio or not?
Yes.
There are paper
Everywhere.
ballots?
Yes. Here.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Not absentee ballots, but I mean a paper backup when you vote.
Yes.
In Hamilton County, is it all over the state?
Yes.
It is all over the state?
I don't know if it's there yet. Yes. All over, okay.
And then the other thing I want to say is that after our arguing, and when we have our candidates, it's vote blue, no matter who, because our issues are more important to get in office than maybe our little differences with some things. Some of us want Medicare for all, some of us want a two-step process. That's not important. What's important is that we take over control of an out-of-control government. And that's all.
Would you tell us, is there any way for us to communicate with the Ohio Democratic Party? And that may seem like a dumb question, but we have not, I certainly don't know how.
So I think the best and quickest way would be to start with your county party and working with Hamilton County, especially under the new leadership. You know, they certainly can help channel your messages and pull them together so that it's a stronger message, because I understand that there are a lot of people who have opinions about how things are going in Columbus right now.
Oh my God.
David will talk. That's true.
So Jill, I know everybody has something. I'm curious, the party seems very smokestacked by county. So what opportunities do you see for us to be more connected across county lines so we can be more coordinated and also be more strategic, and where people are willing and there's the opportunity to deploy resources from bluer portions of the district to redder portions and help get more support? Because I think one of our problems is we're all talking to people who are a lot like us, and we didn't need you to win here. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you were already going to win. So how do we make the best use of that and the best coordination?
So I think that what would be really effective and efficient would be for the leaders of all of these fantastic individual groups, Greater Cincinnati Democrats, Mount Adams Democrats, Blue Ash, to join together to do outreach to the folks in charge of the Warren County social groups. So not just the Warren County Party or the Franklin County Party, but to talk to the folks who are doing the work on the ground and build those relationships among the leaders of those groups so that you can figure out quickly what's needed where and start that response. Because this is the one thing that we're doing again. The party is us. We are the party. If we're not for something, be loud. Because there can be no leadership without support from the bottom.
Jill, what I was going to say is I have just gotten involved with the politics, cause of Trump. He has gotten me off the couch, and so anyways, so what I have noticed is I go to the Bold New Democracy, I go to the West Side Dems, I come here, I'm helping with getting Indivisible District 1 restarted, and just doing anything I can. What I have found, though, is that each of the groups are not talking to each other even.
Right.
So what I have been trying to do is find out information specifically on Chabot and his town halls, and I shoot the information to everybody I can ever think of. Now, it seems to me that Hamilton County Democratic Party should have some kind of a wheel there. It's like we got a lot of spokes and we have no place to send it. And it seems to me that somebody should be directing this, that it shouldn't be the little guy like me that's trying to sort of bring the groups together.
Who's doing it, not you? Right. Sandy, do you want to address this one?
It is the little guy. It is us little guys. And that goes back to the too much money or Wall Street in it. It is us little guys. Now, I agree with you that we have groups out there that are or are not aligned with or have a ward chair or PE in their structure, okay? So I would love to see, and maybe Jill would lead this charge. I've talked to her about this in the past, maybe along with Ginger Bach, maybe with Pavan, I'm not sure who else. And I would love to see an all-county summit of all the players, not just the Hamilton County Democratic Party and its all the board chairs and PEs, but like the PER people out in Blue Ash, like us, Matt Adams, even though I'm the ward chair, okay? And then you, I don't know if you're a PE or a ward chair, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're trying to start something. I would love to see an all Hamilton County giant summit, maybe at the convention. I'd scare the bejesus out of those Republicans if we did this.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I disagree with Jill. I disagree with Jill in the fact that, we have to wait until the gerrymandering is taken care of. We have got to hold Chabot accountable for what he is saying. And what I'm doing is going to these town halls and recording them and throwing them out onto the internet.
To be very clear, the first district and the second district are very different animals in how they are drawn and what their population is.
Well, Chabot just had an interview where he explained that gerrymandering was a gift to him and to the city. And my God, I think we should all go to his damn town hall and put bows on and go visit this man.
I love that idea.
I am just up to here. He is constantly lying. He's got Trump's talking points, and he is shooting down the line, everything. And he got the nuns of Delhi ticked off. And 8 of them showed up at his office on the following Tuesday after his meeting. And so I am now trying to work with the nuns to see if we can get that work.
Okay, listen, if Jill isn't smart enough to run out of here, you may come and speak with her individually at the end. Now, we can go on forever. That was a warning there, Jill. There you go. So I want to thank all of you for coming today. You have done a great job. Let me just remind you about what's happening next week. Next week is the Sierra Club, Bob Parks. Let's not forget the environment while we're doing all the rest of this stuff. And after that, we're going to the Human Rights Campaign with Karen Morgan. We keep on going. Have you noticed that we have good speakers this year? And I think one of the things we're doing is we are the foot people. And we are one of the places where people talk to each other. I mean, we had 40 people here today. And that is nothing to be ashamed of, folks. That we have 40 people, and when we go to these other places, they have 10 or 12 and are happy to have that number. So we are...
Just real quick, you're having the Sierra Club here next week?
Yes.
Orsenco, which is the group that watches our Ohio River from New York all the way down. They are going to be deciding in June. Were you at the Orsenco meeting?
We've sent around two different sets of...
Good. So you all know about Orsenco.
Oh,
They're going to decide in June whether or not they're going to allow states to volunteer to keep the standards, which is ridiculous. So just keep your eye on Orsenco.
Orsenco's not a good... Orsenco's going in a bad direction. Listen, we are the foot people. Remember that. As you go out the door, remember to watch your feet. You are the crew. Thank you for coming. Come on back because we got more waiting to do.